The most dangerous mistake you can make before a big match is telling people exactly what you're going to do. Because at the elite level, the opponent isn't waiting for your magic. They're waiting for your clue. And once they have it, your best idea becomes their best preparation. So this video is about one of the most underrated principles in football, and honestly, in anything competitive. The idea that a plan has its greatest power when it stays hidden. We're going to walk through some of the most fascinating cases in modern football that prove this, from a World Cup coach hiding his lineup from his own players, to a drone scandal that cost a team 6 points at the Olympics, to one of the greatest halftime tactical shifts in Champions League history. By the end of this, the way you think about preparation and silence is going to be completely different. Let's start with something that happened at Euro 2024, because it's one of the most striking examples of how seriously elite coaches take this. Before France's semifinal, Reuters reported that Didier Deschamps had been keeping his tactical plans almost entirely to himself. Not because he didn't trust his players, but because information was leaking out of training sessions and reaching the media, which effectively meant it was reaching the opponent. Adrien Rabiot confirmed it. Details from France's preparation sessions were getting out before matches, so Deschamps did something that sounds almost extreme. He changed the lineup and approach just hours before the Portugal match, and he didn't even tell the players the team until they were already on the way to the stadium. Think about that for a second. The head coach of France, one of the most organized football nations in the world, couldn't fully share the game plan with his own squad because the risk of a leak was too high. That's not paranoia. That's elite-level protection of information. The plan only becomes yours if you can keep it yours until the moment it matters. And here's the thing. This isn't just about secrecy for its own sake. There's actually real psychology behind why this matters. Peter Gallwitzer, a researcher at NYU, ran a series of studies showing that when people publicly announce their intentions, they often put in less effort afterward. The brain gets a small hit of satisfaction just from saying the thing out loud. You feel like you've already taken a step toward becoming the person who does that thing, even though nothing has actually happened yet. In football terms, the moment the plan becomes a story, it starts losing energy. The players who talk about the corner routine in a press conference have already spent some of that intention. The team that stays quiet and executes it in the 89th minute, that's where the full force of the idea lands. But that's only one side of this, because silence isn't just about protecting your own energy. It's also about protecting information from people who are actively trying to take it from you. In 2019, Marcelo Bielsa and Leeds United were fined £200,000 after it came out that his staff had been watching Derby County's training sessions. Bielsa admitted it. And what followed was one of the most unusual press conferences in English football history, where he gave this detailed presentation showing the scale of his analysis. Reportedly, around 360 hours of research, 4 hours per opponent match, covering set pieces, marking patterns, pressing triggers, flank openings, everything. The EFL ended up introducing a rule banning clubs from watching an opponent's open training session within 72 hours of a match without explicit permission. Now, you can debate the ethics of what Bielsa did, but the reason this story matters here is what it tells you about what opponents are actually looking for. They're not trying to find out your philosophy. They're not interested in your big picture vision. They want to know who marks whom on corners. They want to know when your press starts. They want to know which flank opens up when your fullback pushes forward. Those tiny, specific details, the ones that seem almost too small to matter, are exactly what gets studied and exploited at the top level. So if that's what people are hunting for, those details need to be protected. Every training session that's too open, every tactical conversation that happens too close to a microphone, every social media post from inside the camp, it's all potential information for someone who is doing 4 hours of analysis per match. That brings us to something even more dramatic, and honestly, a bit wild, from the 2024 Olympics. Canada's women's national team was hit with a 6-point deduction after a drone scandal involving New Zealand's training sessions. Head coach Bev Priestman was suspended for a year, and the federation was fined 200,000 Swiss francs. New Zealand had complained about drones flying over their sessions before their head-to-head match with Canada. Canada appealed the points deduction. It was rejected by CCAS. 6 points. Gone. Before a single ball was kicked in anger. What this shows is that modern football, and modern sport more broadly, has basically started treating a closed training session the same way you'd treat classified information. A camera, a drone, an insider who posts something on social media. Any of it can cost you the result. The plan has real, measurable value. And the moment it leaves the room, that value starts to leak away. Now here's where the conversation shifts, because everything we've talked about so far is about protecting the plan. But protecting it is only half the job. The other half is executing it at exactly the right moment, and that's where the real magic happens. At the 2018 World Cup, England did something no England team had done in a long time. They turned set pieces into a genuine weapon. FIFA reported that 42% of goals in that tournament up to the semifinals came from set-piece situations, and England set a record for set-piece goals in a single tournament. Gareth Southgate talked openly about how much work went into it, and Ruben Loftus-Cheek mentioned the detail in the preparation, the specific runs, the blocking patterns, who goes where and when. But the moment that really captures this is the Tunisia match. England were drawing 1-1 deep into stoppage time. Alan Russell, the attacking set-piece coach, shouted from the touchline for the players to use their prepared routine. The players lined up in a tight group. They knew their paths. Harry Maguire flicked the ball on, and Harry Kane scored the winner. The routine had been rehearsed. The players knew it. And because they knew it, because it lived in their muscle memory and not in a press release, it worked at the exact moment it needed to. That's the difference. The plan wasn't clever because someone explained it well. It was effective because 11 players understood the movement at the same time, in the most pressured moment of the match, and executed it together. The opponent understood England's plan about 1 second after the ball hit the net. By then, it was already too late. And if you want the ultimate example of a plan becoming real through action rather than words, you have to go back to Istanbul in 2005. Liverpool versus AC Milan. Champions League final. Liverpool are 3-0 down at halftime. By any normal logic, the match is over. But Rafa Benitez walks into that dressing room and makes a decision. He changes the shape to a 3-4-2-1, brings on Dietmar Hamann, and gives Steven Gerrard more freedom to make runs forward. Coach's voice broke down in detail how that switch gave Liverpool more width, more central passing options, and critically, it started to limit the influence of Kaká and Pirlo. Hamann and Alonso began doing the defensive work in midfield, and Gerrard was freed up to be decisive. Liverpool scored 3 goals in 6 minutes in the second half. They won on penalties. It's one of the most famous results in the history of the competition. Now, nobody in that dressing room gave a speech about the plan and then went back to the hotel. The plan only became real when the players changed their positions, changed their tempo, and played with a completely different courage. Saying, "We're going to come back," meant nothing. Moving into the right positions and pressing with the right intensity. That was the plan becoming reality. There's a version of this principle in almost every great tactical story in football. Mourinho's Inter beat Barcelona 3-1 in the first leg of the 2010 Champions League semi-final. Mourinho had identified the space behind Barcelona's high-pushing fullbacks and built his entire approach around it. But he didn't sell that idea in a press conference. He didn't explain it to the world beforehand. Inter executed it, and then after the result was already decided, the world got to see what he'd been thinking. UEFA called Inter's second-leg performance at Camp Nou, where they lost 1-0 with 10 men for over an hour and still advanced, a masterclass in defending. The explanation came after. The result came first. That's the pattern. Great coaches don't announce the strategy. They protect it, they train it, and then they let the results speak. The world gets to understand the plan only after it's already worked. So if you've been watching this and thinking about how this applies beyond football, to your own goals, your own projects, your own competitive situations, I genuinely encourage you to drop a comment below with one thing you're currently working on that you've been tempted to announce before it's done. Because this principle shows up everywhere. The research backs it up, and football proves it at the highest level week after week. I read every comment on this channel, and I'd love to know what you're thinking. And if this kind of deep tactical and psychological breakdown is what you're here for, make sure you're subscribed, because we do this regularly, connecting real football stories to the principles that actually drive performance. There's also a video on this channel about how the best coaches in history used psychology to get more out of their players. And if this topic resonated with you, that one will too. It's worth your time. But let's bring this home, because the full picture here is actually pretty simple once you see it. France at Euro 2024 showed us that even inside a team, information has to be protected. Because a leak doesn't just give the opponent a clue, it removes your advantage entirely. Bielsa's Spygate and Canada's drone scandal showed us that opponents are actively hunting for the tiny details, which means those details have real value and need to be treated that way. England 2018 and Liverpool 2005 showed us that a plan is only as good as its execution. The idea in the dressing room means nothing until it lives on the pitch, in real time, under real pressure. And Mourinho against Barcelona showed us the final piece. The explanation comes after the result, never before. At the start of this video, a game plan probably felt like something you share to get buy-in, to build excitement, to show people you've thought it through. But the best plans in football history were never announced. They were protected, trained, and then executed at the exact moment the opponent least expected them. Don't tell people how you're going to win. Train until the plan is so deep in your preparation that on match day, the opponent only understands it after the whistle, when there's nothing left to change. In football, you're not respected for announcing your strategy. You're respected because the opponent understood it too late. Subscribe. We break down football the way TV never will.